Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's edition of the Maconi Setup Shop A-Fix Tutorials. This week we are looking at the famed Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so strap in and let's get to it. As always, with every video that we do for these, I'll start off with the shifting. Very awkward situation. Fifth gear in the draft is, in my opinion, pretty short. I don't know what kind of speeds you'll reach in the draft, but you're chipping well before the braking zone in single car, so I would imagine that it's going to be worse in the draft. Um, so there is a technique that I want to get into. I do think that it is important though for the first couple laps. I don't think it's faster, but I think it's easier on the brakes and the tires to a degree. The first few laps, I would recommend shifting into fourth, going into 1 and 3, and then riding fourth between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then shifting on the straightaway. In my opinion, it just helps the car slow down for the corner on cold tires, uh, get down to the line, which is so important, which we'll get into. I do think, however, after about 3 or 4 laps, depending on how strong the draft is, I mean, you might want to be shifting into fourth gear until you have some clean air on the nose, but I think after a few laps, you should be able to just run fifth gear completely, which is what I did on my last 2 laps. If you look on the lap counter on the left, the last 2 laps, my lap 5 and 6, I ran fifth gear all the way around, and it felt really good. The tires had grip. I was able to slow down for the corners. However, early run, in the runs that I was trying to do earlier, if I held fifth gear the entire time, I couldn't get to the bottom to save my life, it felt like. So I just wanted to cover that. As you can see on the straightaways, I'm lifting to about 3/4 throttle while I'm still on the straightaway. And the technique behind that is you're trying to help lengthen the gear. Okay, if you are full throttle and you're bouncing off the rev limiter, you're not going to get any extra speed. Okay, you're going to be capped. So even when you're in the draft, if you're lifting to about 80% throttle or even 3/4 throttle, you're still going to be running the same RPM, but you're not going to be bouncing off the chip, and you're still going to be able to gain that extra speed. Okay, whether you're in single car, whether you're the leader, or in the draft, it's just a technique to help lengthen the straightaway and use the motor to give you what power it can before you really start hitting the chip. I mean, you're going to hit the chip regardless, especially at these speeds. Not sure if iRacing is going to lengthen the gear before this with a hot fix or whatever, but if they don't, very important to know, a little technique you can do is lift off the throttle going down the straightaway and make the straightaway longer so that you're not hitting the rev limiter. In solo car, I'm trying to brake around the 1 marker. I feel like it's a very comfortable brake marker. It is important though, and I know I've done a bad example for a few laps. This right here is what you want to. You want to get to that white line as soon as you can. The grip that is underneath that white line is very noticeable, and it more or less helps pull your car around the track. Okay, if you miss the white line, you're going to find that you got to use a lot more steering wheel. Uh, you're not going to have as much grip, and you're not going to have the same kind of drive off on exit. Okay, the biggest thing about Indianapolis, it's a huge rhythm racetrack. For me, I've always enjoyed running here, but it is very important to get to the white line. If you give up a little bit on entry, you'll make up for it on exit. It's that important, okay? Which also puts a premium on passing. If you're making a pass, obviously it's going to be to the inside. Passing on the outside here just really doesn't happen unless there's a huge speed advantage, right? Uh, Typically, it's hard to fight off somebody who's trying to pass you. As long as you can get down below the white line, the closer to the rumble strip, the better. You obviously don't want to touch the rumble strip, but the closer you get to it, the better it is. And it's a very noticeable feel while driving, the level of grip that you have down there. Okay. The last thing that I wanted to touch on too was the inputs. Okay. It's very important. You don't want to be using a lot of wheel. My goal here is I want to set the car up for the entry by using a little bit of wheel input, and then you're just trying to hold it. If you find that you're going into the corner and you're having to fight the steering wheel, you're going way too hard. Okay. A little bit of brake to set the nose, get down to that line, and you're trying to keep the wheel as straight as possible so that you're not scrubbing as much speed. If the car starts to come up a bit, as long as you feel like you're not going to hit the wall, let it. Okay? You're trying to keep the wheel as straight as possible so that you can carry the most speed you can and have the best runoff you can. Okay? If you're fighting the steering wheel, you really need to back your corners up. Okay. I'm going to go back a couple laps. We'll do one lap where we're shifting, and then the last couple you'll see in fifth gear, just to point out uh, what it looks like. Again, I really do believe early run, you're going to want to shift. I truly don't think it's faster, but it helps. It helps me at least be more consistent getting the car down, and that's important. When you're shifting into fourth gear for the corners, it's also important to be smooth on the gas. A lot higher RPM. If you just jump on the gas, you're obviously going to spin the right rear more. So it's important to just be smooth with it. Pretend that there's an egg under the throttle, as they say, and ease your way into 100% throttle. Also, not a good idea to hit the rev limiter in fourth gear like I did off of turn 2. Want to shift gears a little bit faster than that. That was a little mistake that I made, but again, that's the other importance of just staying at fifth gear. You don't have to worry about shifting, and I do think that once the tires have enough heat, you don't need to downshift. As long as you let off at the correct spot, use the brakes to slow the car down, and let it get down to the line. And then for 2 and 4 especially, I'm trying to keep the throttle in it. I'm trying to get back to the throttle as early as I can and build my momentum. 2 and 4 are not corners that you want to just get to the center and mash the gas. Okay, you definitely want to use the throttle to start building your momentum. The throttle also helps the car rotate at a lower throttle percentage. So again, you're just trying to build your momentum and get the best run off of the corner as possible, so you can make the straightaways longer. Okay, guys, one thing that I forgot to mention that I'm noticing now that I look back, the wall proximity. For qualifying especially, but even during the race, um, if you're going to run right up against the wall, you're going to be giving up some speed because of the wall proximity. The drag is going to slow you down, so it's important to know that even while you're racing, if you just move like 3/4 of a car length away from it, right, you're not going to have an effect from that wall proximity. Okay. The other thing too is, again, most people are not going to try to set up a pass on the outside. Uh, so it's not like you're giving up your outside, right? It's not like a Chicagoland or a Kansas where you don't want to give up the outside. Um, you need to stay away from the wall enough so that you're not affected. And I don't think it's a bad thing, because I don't think anybody's really going to try to force themselves to your outside. Everything's going to be set up to move to the inside. So again, just for a speed issue, you just want to stay off that wall so that you're not slowing yourself down. Um, Also, again, with the shifting, it's so hard for me to predict what the race is going to be like. Based off of what I feel in single car, you might want to shift into fourth, depending on how bad the dirty air is, just to help the car rotate. Um, but you might be okay staying in fifth. I do think fifth gear is faster, so if you're leading, I think fifth gear is the way to go. You don't have to worry about dirty air. You just have to worry about hitting your marks and getting down to the white line so that you can keep your speed up. And then to set up a pass, I've always found that, lifting for the corner a little sooner and trying to build that run on exit, you set up your passes off of 2 and 4. Realistically, it's very rare that you see passes made um, off of 1 going into 2 or off of 3 going into 4. Typically, you want to set up your run for the straightaway and have position going into 3 or 1. Um, it just That's just how Indy races, and the way to do that is by getting yourself a good run. If you can keep your car lower than the guy in front of you, you're going to have that clean air on your nose, help build that run, and set up the pass for the next corner. Okay, guys, that'll just about do it for this week's video. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, as always, please leave a comment down below, and I will try my best to get through to them throughout the week. If you find that these videos are helpful, please consider leaving a like. And as always, if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you can see these videos every Monday when they're posted to the Maconi YouTube page. Alright, guys, best of luck, and we'll see you out on the track.